All right, let's get this started. Mr. Wayne here. It is Wednesday, February 19th, and right now it is 11:07. Now we have week 4 that we're going to be covering tonight. Now, a lot of things have changed since I started this system. I know it's only been 3 weeks, but you'd be amazed on how quickly things can happen for you. I'm realizing how quickly things can happen for me. Now, when it comes with financial gain, for example, I am moving forward when it comes with my opportunities. You know what I realize? I've been sitting on gold, especially when it comes with Walmart. Walmart is a very, very fantastic company, and learning more and more about their system, how they operate, and just the camaraderie that happens within Walmart. Now, for granted, a lot of all the places, a lot of, I want to use the word silly things, right? You see a lot of things from customers, specifically younger customers, when it comes to Walmart, or even those that are frustrated that give an attitude so they could get what they want, right? That's a big part of what happens with Walmart, but ultimately the opportunity that's there. The other day, I am in the process of enrolling. I already talked with my manager about enrolling in a program called the M3, and it's a promotional program. And a lot of the things that she was saying is how we see things, right? And I know, being here talking about consciousness, right? Everybody's experience is where they are at in consciousness, because it's filtered from their mind, their reality. When you expand the consciousness, you're expanding your life experience. If you have a shrunken consciousness, your experience in life will be shrunk, right? It'll be smaller. And this is in line with what Jesus teaches too, when he talks about how we will have more life within ourselves. We'll have more life, more understanding, more wisdom, we'll be able to enjoy more of what life has to offer through the expansion of our consciousness. But back to the conversation I was having with my manager. So I was talking to her about the program and my interest in it, and she told me that she's going to get with somebody and get me started with it. And we're already being taught our position for team lead. I'm going to be the next team lead. I'm taking this opportunity. I'm moving forward. And I've been at Walmart for a year as a part-timer. Now, I got into trucking a year and a half ago, and I made a mistake with trucking. You know, things happen, and I ended up losing my position, and which led me to where I am today. And now I'm at Walmart. But after this entire year working with Walmart, it's made me realize how fantastic of a company it actually is. And realizing, you know, even as we're talking about this and our thoughts, right? What we manifest is dependent upon our thinking. And even though I would go into work, I would work very hard, I would do what I needed to do, but my training was limited because my focus was still on trying to get back in that truck. You know, of all the applications I put in, all the whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. I've reached the point to where I'm taking, right, the gold that I thought I lost, I ended up stumbling upon other gold. And I'm realizing the opportunity I actually have in my hands when it comes with working with this company. And I'm I never thought I'd say this, I'm very, very grateful to be there. And I work at a super center too. And there is a ton of opportunity at that specific location that I'm in. And I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm very grateful for it. And I meet truckers too, truckers that truck with Walmart, and they talk about how they're treated like gold, right? There are a lot of trucking companies that will not treat you like gold, right? There are a lot of companies that won't treat you like gold. In Walmart, you know, obviously the company is made up of the people that make it up, right? They made up of the people that work there. They're really, really great, fantastic people where I work, and I'm very grateful to be where I am today. And, you know, my goals have definitely changed when it comes with this new year, and we're moving forward with what we have. And for trucking, You know, it's not like it's gone. I still have my CDL. But that's maybe later, right? I need to take advantage of what I have now, right? And that, like New Thought teaches, it's where we are now, right? It's not about what happened in the past. We can reflect on the past, but we can't. It's dangerous holding on to something from the past. Excuse me. Because it happened, right? It happened. It's gone. It is what it is. What matters is where we are now, what we're doing now to build our future, to manifest the opportunities that are in front of us. And I recently seen a quote. It said, I don't know who it was from. I don't remember what it was word for word. But to me, when I started, I felt like I was in a very dark place, right? Mentally. Like I felt like I missed an opportunity for something great. And internally, it just felt like I was in a dark place. And I seen something recently. It said, when you feel like you're in a dark place, it's because you've been planted, right? The ideal of taking a seed and putting it in the soil, obviously the seed is going to be in a dark place, right? It's underground. And the whole point of it, how I took it for me was, hey, even though I was moving in this direction, I was planted over here. And for my e-commerce and all that good stuff, all these stuff that I desire to do, I see Walmart being in perfect alignment with it. And that's a big reason why I got into trucking in general, because it was in line with what I wanted to build, what I wanted to do with my life, right? E-commerce, it's building a for-profit company and providing products that are of value, that people want, that people desire, that people need. And what I wanted to build it into was a legitimate warehouse, like not just some online business, but to take it and make it bigger. And I know when it comes to that way of running and operating a business, I would need to have truckers, right? I need to have truckers. And so big reason I got into trucking was because that was in alignment with what I was going to do, what I want to do. Let me rephrase that. Because I was speaking from a past situation, right? We're no longer in the trucking right now. We got this other thing. But then Walmart, right? Like it's the biggest, if not the biggest retail company in the entire world. The system, their system, and they have a phenomenal system. Their system is the reason that they are where they are. And I'm learning how their system works and how to manage the system. And I think about my e-commerce because I'm learning how to manage the flow of products. And even for my e-commerce, I'm going to be managing the flow of my products, right? So what I thought, like it's just I don't know, it's dawning upon me, like just where I am, the opportunity that I have, and how this is also in alignment with the things that I want, things I desire to create for myself, for you, for society, for my family, right? All the good stuff that comes with being alive, especially as a man. Men are created to build, and we find our highest happiness in building things. But aside from all that, back to the conversation I had with my manager, we have this very, very fantastic opportunity at our fingertips. And she said something about perspective. And because Walmart pays for so many things for us to help us become better at what we do. And ironically, I had a colleague, he's younger than me, and he was talking about the amount of work that he does. And I told him, like, look at it this way. Like, yes, it could be hard work. It could be very tiring. It could be tedious, whatever, right? But look at it in the way that, hey, it's making you a better, stronger version of yourself because you're applying yourself. You're learning how to manage yourself, fight through work, get things done, and doing it in such a way to, hey, don't complain about it. Like we learned in the last part anyway, eliminate the tendency of complaining of conditions as they are, because it rests with us to make them what we want them to be, right? Because mind is creative, mind is the causative force and the causative factor, and thought is the process which sets mind in motion, which sets the mind into moving a direction. The only limitations are the limitations of our belief, our thoughts, and our ability to imagine, to create mental pictures, to be able to see ourselves performing a task and believing that it's possible for us. Those are the limitations. Yes, you get tired, but right, you just got to push through, you got to get better. And I was telling her that, and then what my manager was telling me was like the same thing. She was saying a lot of people go through life expecting to get more than what they give, without realizing that they have to first give it first in order to get it. That's essentially what she was telling me. So essentially, like we're learning here about being it, we have to be it first, and then its manifestation will follow. That's exactly what she told me. Not in those words, but what she was saying. And then the perspective she put it in it was, you're getting paid to learn, right? Like, I'm getting paid to learn. Yes, I'm providing service, I'm working, but the perspective of going into work and providing that service is not just for a paycheck. That's a part of it, right? Yes, it is helping us pay our bills. The most important part of it is what it's helping us to become, where it is going to be leading us into what we're going to be in the future, because we know our future selves and where we're at in the future, the things we have, the money we make, the relationships we have, are all dependent upon what we're doing today and how we think today. So this opportunity is a vehicle to get us to think the way we need to think, work the way we need to work, provide service the way we need to provide service from. Because even now I'm learning to think, we're thinking from the system, right? We're thinking from Walmart's system and managing that system, which is very interesting, because even in with creating this society, like I'm doing this as an altruistic thing. Like my desires is to build a community of higher consciousness, people involved in higher ways of thinking. I have no desire to make money off of any of this. And I look at this sometimes like it's almost like I'm building a church, right? In a way, it feels like I'm building a church because it's directly connected to Christ. But we know that, like, I don't desire to be one of those pastors, so to speak, or preachers that lives off of what he makes from being a preacher or a pastor, right? It's not about that. Like, it's for profit. God gave us freely, and even Christ came and gave Christ freely. So who are we to make money off of the Word of God, right? That is something that is given freely and should be given freely. Now, there are a lot of churches that I have seen and been through where they people donate, but yet they're still selling food at the church, right? They're going to do whatever they're going to do, whatever, right? Do whatever you're going to do. For the most part, all those donations are to provide that for people, to lead them to what? To this, right? In the words of Christ, in the form of old biblical knowledge. But ultimately, it all leads to what? The mind, the spirit, our connection with God, the power of Christ within, the Christ that is within. And all that leads to where we are in consciousness, right? All that takes a person who is struggling with life, because ultimately they're manifesting those things through their attitude, and they don't know it, right? They don't know it. And taking that and giving them the vehicle that they need and the information they need to change their mind, right? As we were told, by the renewing of our mind, giving them the opportunity to do that. And yes, we live in a capitalistic society, it is what it is. But something like that must be given freely, because it's connected with God, with consciousness, with the spirit of everything. And then even for me, I'm going through a lot of changes in my personal life, a lot of changes in my work life. And I know, as hard as some of them can be, because we can't decide how other people are going to take things, right? You could have the best intentions in the world, but like we mentioned, it's dependent too, when it comes with somebody else, where they are in consciousness, and how they choose to think about things is how they're going to choose to think about them. You can mean the best of intentions, but if they have a negative mental attitude, your good intentions won't mean anything, right? Because they're going to filter it the way they're going to filter it. They're going to respond to it the way they're going to respond to it. And then for me, it's like, okay, it is what it is. How am I going to move forward with my life aside from all of that? Because that's something that's out of my control, right? We can't control somebody else's mind or thoughts. True, we can influence, but it is what it is. Now, what I need to do is get through part 4, because we committed to this. We're committed to this. Every Wednesday, we're committed to our training and moving to the next part, right? This is our program. So last week in part 3, Mr. Hanno covered a lot of the conscious and the subconscious mind. Again, he put it in different words. He talks about how the subconscious mind is equivalent to a sun, right? It's the sun of the body. It's the energy of the body. It's the part of ourselves which distributes all the energy we need for creating whatever we want, for life, for living, right? This energy has its center within our solar plexus, and that center is in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is the power which holds infinite possibilities, because the subconscious mind is the mind of the universe inside of us. And God, the universe, being all wisdom, being omnipotent, all powerful, all wisdom, all everywhere present, and immortal, all the attributes that are inside the universal mind are also within us. And through our conscious mind, the conscious mind being the directing power, right? The directing force, that this center of energy, this sun inside of us, so to speak, is just constantly generating energy. It's putting out energy. Now, our conscious mind, the watchman at the gate, the director of this infinite power within, this life force within, is what directs this energy into a specific direction. And that is why it's so important, again, for us that we need to know exactly what we want. We need to make a decision. Now, even for work, like I made a decision. I made the decision that, hey, I am moving forward with this opportunity that I have. It's not about the opportunity I had in the past. I don't even want to think about it anymore, because I'm 31, right? I'm only getting older, and I have to make the best of where I am now, because now in reality is the only time there is, right? And I made the decision, and I've been acting upon that decision, taking action. And now I'm being trained as a team lead. Now I'm enrolled in the M3 program. I'm having more, I don't want to use the word intimate, but it is intimate, right? It's more personal conversations with higher ups when it comes to the place that I work. And all that is because I made a decision, or I made the decision to move forward and to be better at what I do with where I'm at. And as we talked about manifestation, right, I was that causative force because of that decision I made in my thought process, in alignment with my ideal, right? The ideal that I had led me to a new form of work, right? A new position in work, a higher responsibility, so to speak. Now, again, I directed it, right? I directed it, I created it, and the law of attraction, cause and effect, these universal laws just moved. Things just moved. And and I'm on a path. I feel like I'm on a good path. And because I made the decision to do this, some people I don't like it. And then that was another thing. In things do happen. There is a back end personal story with a lot of the things that I go through, but ultimately I know that I need to do what's best for me, and I need to act from where I am, not from where anybody else is. I need to act from where I'm at in my life, and I need to make my decisions for myself, whether other people like it or not, right? And then likewise with you, viewer, like, we need to make decisions for ourselves. We need to move trusting ourselves and the things that we see for ourselves. And we need to believe in that and know that and act upon it regardless of certain external factors. Because this is your life. This is our life. And it's our responsibility to make our life what we want it to be, not anybody else's. And it's not about what somebody else wants for us. It's about what we want. So that's what we went over in part 3. In my experience with the training, I'm able to sit erect for longer and being able to relax under tension. Being, it's a subtle change. It's hard to explain. Like, even today, I was at the gym, and men, we compete with each other. It is what it is. Like, we compete with each other. And today, it was like, I didn't feel influenced or moved by somebody else's energy towards me and their desire to compete as somebody that trains better or any of that. Because I gotta tell you, I know I'm not the biggest or the strongest person, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I've been doing this for a very long time. Remember, I was NASM certified. I have a scientific, higher understanding when it comes to exercise science. And I have a very, very good physique. Is it the best physique in the world? No, I don't. But I look better physically than the majority of people there. Like I said, am I the biggest? No. Am I the strongest? No. But does that even really matter, right? The way I train and the results that I have very good results, and a lot of men compete with me. And today I felt that, you feel that from people, and it was just like, it didn't matter. Like, I'm doing my thing, I'm here. If they want to do that, if it helps them work out harder, by all means. And it feels good in a lot of ways to be that external factor that they actually chose me to compete with. Some random dude, some stranger that's just there minding his own business, working out. But yet, I have a very, very phenomenal... I have a good physique. I have a great physique. I know I do. But like I said, being that factor of needing to be better than, right, for these other people to choose to use me as the factor to be better than, it feels really good, because it makes me know that, hey, I am doing very good. Because if I wasn't, they wouldn't use me as that external motivation, right? And that's what that means. That's where that comes from. Because I don't compete with anybody there except me. And I think a lot of that has to do with, right, like, just the information that I have. And I know I work hard, right? I know there was a saying of right, we're validated by our own results, right? We're validated by what we know we put in, because we get the results. We know that even our physical body is following a causative law, right? If I work out and if I train right, intelligently and hard, and I eat right and rest, we're going to get results no matter what we are going to get results, because the subconscious mind, the intelligence within us, will then rebuild our body, right? It'll build our body. And all we have to do is make sure that we are doing it right? What we learn with training and fitness is the exact same principles that's in everything else. And it all stems back to where we are in consciousness and where we are in the mind. So, I just know that I'm changing subtly. And I need to keep up with doing this, because like solving a Rubik's Cube, you have to mess it up first, or go through a challenge first, or feelings of like just conditions that don't really look the best. But knowing that through all of that, those things have to be moved around in order, like, right, the Rubik's Cube, you have to move the Rubik's Cube in order to fully put it together. Exact same thing in certain conditions in our life. When we choose to go a direction, everything else is going to change for us to fit in that picture, that direction, to move in that direction. And that's what I'm going through. That's what we're experiencing. And it's very interesting, I'll tell you that. So let's go and get started, because we're already 26 minutes in. So part 4, week 4. Enclosed herewith, I hand you part 4. This part will show you why what you think or do or feel is an indication of what you are. Thought is energy, and energy is power. And it is because all the religions, sciences, and philosophies with which the world has heretofore been familiar have been based upon the manifestation of this energy instead of the energy itself, that the world has been limited to effects, while causes have been ignored or misunderstood. So as we've been talking about, the mind, our thinking process, is the cause of what we manifest in our lives. And he's saying religions, philosophies, these things are based on manifested properties instead of, right, they're based on effects instead of being based specifically in the cause itself. Right, while causes have been ignored or misunderstood. For this reason, we have God and the devil in religion, positive and negative in science, and good and bad in philosophy. The master key reverses the process. The master key reverses the process. It is interested only in cause. And the letters received from students tell a marvelous story. They eliminate conclusively that students are finding the cause whereby they may secure for themselves health, harmony, abundance, and whatever else may be necessary for their welfare and happiness. So good and bad he's using as the scale of, hey, thought is the causative force which causes either a good result or a bad result. He's saying in religion, thought is the causative force between the understand, well, it says God and the devil in religion. We know God exists. We know, the devil does exist. It's a very negative spirit. It's a very evil spirit. It's a negative force. We know that does exist. Positive and negative in science, and good and bad in philosophy. So we'll go to move forward from that. Maybe he'll elaborate more on exactly what he means when he's talking about the differences between God and the devil. So he does tell us Master Key focuses mainly on the causative factor in our lives. So life is expressive, and it is our business to express ourselves harmoniously and constructively. Sorrow, misery, unhappiness, disease, and poverty are not necessities, and we are constantly eliminating them. But this process of eliminating consists in rising above and beyond limitation of any kind. He who has strengthened and purified his thought need not concern himself about microbes, and he who has come into an understanding of the law of abundance will go at once to the source of supply. It is thus that fate, fortune, and destiny will be controlled as readily as a captain controls his ship or an engineer his train. So I think from what it sounds like, the perspective he's coming from, regardless of our understanding of anything, right, it all leads back to the operations of our own thought process and how we think about it. So part 4, that's the end of the introduction. He says, the I of you. Now the I he's talking about is just the I, not your physical I, not EYE. It's I, it's the letter I. So he's saying the I of you, and it's in parentheses. Well, I don't know how well you could really see that. Oh yeah, you can see that. See, he says the I. So he's talking about something in particular when it comes with the I. He's saying this I of us is not the physical body. That is simply the instrument which the I uses to carry out its purposes. The I cannot be the mind, for the mind is simply another instrument which the I uses, with which to think, reason, and plan. So he's talking about I, right? He's talking about our identity. He's talking about our center of intelligence, consciousness, because we know ourselves to exist. We're conscious beings and we're aware. Now, we could be aware and not think anything at all, right? We could live in the present moment without thinking anything. We're just totally engrossed in the experience of life. Now, that experience, that awareness, is the identity of I. Because consciousness has an identity, and it's identified as the I am. And this I am controls the body, and it controls the mind. He goes into further saying the I must be something which controls and directs the body, both the body and the mind, something which determines what they shall do and how they shall act. When you come into a realization of the true nature of this I, you will enjoy a sense of power which you have never known before, or which you have never before known. Your personality is made up of countless individual characteristics, peculiarities, habits, and traits of character. These are the result of your former method of thinking, but they have nothing to do with the real I. Now that's very interesting, because I remember reading in, I don't remember what book it is called. It was a while ago, but it's by William Walker Atkinson. He talks about the personality. He says the personality is likened to garments, right? It's the garments that the mind wears. The personality is the character which the mind chooses to embody. It has nothing to do really with what the I actually is, because the I is pure being. It's pure spiritual awareness. It's pure consciousness. And we know the nature of consciousness is to embody itself in form. So the personality is the form which the I is manifesting itself through. And we know this is true because we know we could change our personality, right? We could change our mind. The I itself, being spiritual, is something that cannot change. Right? It is the essence of everything. It is something that is eternal, and that just is. But the mind can be changed. We can change the mind. So that shows that even the mind is under subjection to the power of the I am. Right? Our personality has nothing to do with the I. And we could change our personality, and we do that by changing our mind. When you say, I think, the I tells the mind what it shall think. When you say, I go, the I tells the physical body where it shall go. The real nature of this I is spiritual, and is the source of the real power which comes to men and women when they come into a realization of their true nature. So he's saying the real source of power that we will have will be from the understanding and moving into, you could say, moving into the place of power, right? Moving into the real place of which we are. And that, remember, that movement happens in consciousness. Remember how he told us in week 1, it is being conscious of it. We have to obtain it in consciousness. We have to be aware. We have to understand it. And through our spiritual life, our inner understanding of it, do we then move in that reality. We move into that condition. We take possession of it. Those were the words he was saying. We take possession of it. So we take possession of the real nature of our I when we come into the right understanding of it. And we move into our true power as humans when we understand ourselves as the I am, in our place above our mind and our body. So he says, the greatest and most marvelous power which this I has been given is the power to think. But few people know how to think constructively or correctly. Consequently, they achieve only indifferent results. Most people allow their thoughts to dwell on selfish purposes, the inevitable result of an infantile mind. When the mind becomes mature, it understands that the germ of defeat is in every selfish thought. And we even went over how selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of all negative, destructive things. Abel Ellen talks about that in The Message of New Thought. I have that book out there for you to listen to. You need to give it a listen to. In, I believe it's chapter 11, in The Art of Living, right? Because he talks about the viewpoint, right? He talks about our view of life. But I do remember reading how he mentioned selfishness being a very destructive force, because a selfish person and their thoughts are mainly upon themselves and what they're getting and gaining, right? It's all about them. But we know being of service is completely opposite to selfishness. Now, maybe not. You could be of service for selfish purposes. You could also be of service for selfless purposes, right? So we'll retract on that. Doesn't matter, right? Service is service, but the way you provide the service and how you go about doing it is dependent upon your, right? It comes from where you are in consciousness, from the selfish thought or from the unselfish thought. But he's saying selfishness comes from an immature mind, and the mature mind is unselfish, because they know and understand the unity of everything. They understand everybody has their own life. They understand everybody operates from where they are. Live and let live, right? And they don't go about trying to force themselves upon somebody else. The trained mind knows that every transaction must benefit every person who is in any way connected with the transaction, and any attempt to profit by the weakness, ignorance, or necessity of another will inevitably operate to his disadvantage. So what he is saying here is that we have to operate from an unselfish center of thought, because we know what karma is. We know the law of attraction. This law is in operation in exact accordance with your thinking process and by the nature of your thinking, because the nature of your thought determines the nature of your character, your conduct, your attitude, and that attitude will in turn have the influence on the environment in that material form. So when we think from selfishness, we operate in transactions in a more negative, on a lower vibe, so to speak, than operating on it from a higher vibration, from a higher thought, from a higher viewpoint. Because operating from the center of selfishness will inevitably operate to our disadvantage, because then it's not about really anybody else, right? It's not That way of operation doesn't come from what we want for ourselves, we want for all. It doesn't come from unity. It comes from ego. It comes from individuality, mainly individuality. It comes mainly from what you want over somebody else. This is because the individual is part of the universal. And he says right there, because we're all connected. A part cannot antagonize any other part. But, on the contrary, the welfare of each part depends upon a recognition of the interest of the whole. Now, I know you know this being a reality from your own experience. I know you experienced a time where you dealt with a person who was operating from a sense of ego, and they may have caused a very disharmony of a condition, right? They may have created a situation between you two that is very inharmonious, right? You could find somebody and you have another interaction with somebody, you could tell they're operating from love. They're operating from a viewpoint that isn't selfish, and it created harmony. It created respect. It created an effect, so to speak, of love and respect, as I said before. Right? And those that mainly operate from love are those that put the ego aside, because they're operating from the higher viewpoint of, hey, this person, I'm a part of this person, even though we're individual, right? Even though we're in our own forms, we're still connected on that spiritual level, and how we interact with each other in consciousness is going to create a situation between both of you, and ultimately create a train of causation to whatever future action may proceed from that, right? Because it's thinking, right? It's the attitude, and we know that attitude is a causative factor of conditions. Okay. A part cannot antagonize a whole, but on the contrary, the welfare of each part depends upon a recognition of the interests of the whole. See, saying your own personal welfare is dependent upon the interest of everybody involved in the transaction. Those who recognize this principle have a great advantage in the affairs of life. They do not wear themselves out. They can eliminate vagrant thoughts with facility. They can readily concentrate to the highest possible degree on any subject. They do not waste time or money upon objects which can be of no possible benefit to them. And this is why this program is so important, because we will be, remember, we're training our mind to conscientiously and subconsciously, remember, to habitually think from a higher viewpoint. If you cannot do these things, it is because you have thus far not made the necessary effort. Now is the time to make the effort. The result will be exactly in proportion to the effort expended. One of the strongest affirmations which you can use for the purpose of strengthening the will and realizing your power to accomplish is, quote, I can be what I will to be, end quote. And we've all heard that saying, where there's a will, there's a way, because thought comes from the will. Remember, we learned in a recent part that the conscious mind and willpower is under the willpower is the direct operation of the conscious mind. And what we focus on, what we make a decision on, what we decide to do, we are willing ourselves to be it. Because the subconscious is remember, it's that center of energy that's just constantly giving out power. And it's open. It has no prior pattern of how it's going to express itself. Remember that it's an open pattern. And the conscious mind is what creates the pattern for the expression of this power. And will is the power which sets that pattern in motion, right? We could be what we will to be. We can Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a mind dedicated to achieving it, the way will be made plain. It will be shown for us. Because the law, right, the universal law, God will open the way for us through these higher natural laws. Now we know fitness as an example. Fitness is a perfect example because it's something we could physically see. We know the strength we develop and get back is dependent upon how much we put into the exercise, right? You have to break the muscle down, and this is done through stress. You're literally it's deliberate stress. And the body, through adaptation under stress, will be adapting to meet the conditions of the new requirement, right? To meet the requirements of the new condition. The condition being the destruction of the muscle under high resistance. Well, the response to that, the requirement to that is for your body to build a stronger muscle so it can match that condition with better effort next time. It's the exact same thing here. He's saying if we can't do this, it's because we haven't made the effort, right? If you can't do this, it's because you're not making the effort to meditate, to really train your thinking, to get into that meditation phase of bringing your mind, focusing your mind and your thought process toward the goal, right? You have to train your mind as well as you're training your body to focus your thoughts and attention on that singular purpose. Saying if you can't do this, if you can't accomplish, it's because you have not disciplined and dedicated your mind to the task yet. Just as with the body, right? If you can't lift that weight yet, it's because you haven't dedicated yourself enough to it. If you can't achieve it yet, it's because you haven't dedicated the mind enough to the achievement of it. Now I'm a perfect example of this too. I haven't achieved everything that I've ever set my sights on achieving yet, right? We live, we learn. We have to grow and develop. We grow and develop into higher things. Remember, we're not trees. With our brain and through our conscious efforts, we can change. Whatever happened in the past, viewer, you and I are not barred down by our mistakes, by the things that we may have manifested in the past. Remember, we have to act from where we are now and make the effort now, because what we do now is going to create our future. And through training, personal training. Now, when I say personal training, I'm not talking about going out and getting a personal trainer. I'm talking about personal training, the training you do with yourself in your own time. The dedication you have towards your fitness and the dedication you have towards directing all of the forces of which you are towards the achievements of your goals. Right? That's personal training. That's you making the effort on your own time to do your personal work. This is very, very important. Jim Rohn says that the work we do on ourselves are 10 times more important than any work we could do outside of ourselves, right? The work we do for our internal growth is 10 times more important than the work we do on external factors. Because where we are internally, remember, it's consciousness. Where we are in our mental attitude is going to determine how we act, how we behave, and how well we work on external conditions to begin with. So every time you repeat it, remember, we're talking about the affirmation. Okay, the last affirmation he gave us was, I can be what I will to be. Okay, we're continuing from there. It says, every time you repeat it, realize who and what this I is. Try to come into a thorough understanding of the true nature of the I. If you do, you will become invincible. That is, provided that your objects and purposes are constructive and are therefore in harmony with the creative principle of the universe. So he's saying for the I to be invincible, for you to truly tap into and manifest the highest of what you can be, you have to not be selfish. You have to work and operate from the level of consciousness, the attitude of mind, and from the thought process of unity with higher laws. In doing this towards a higher viewpoint, a higher moral standard, because you're working with others and you're connected to that other person. And the law of attraction, the law of karma, is a very real law. We get back what we give, and we have to give in the best possible way that we know how to give in order to truly achieve the best possible results. Remember, these results will manifest both in your character and who you are as an individual. They will also manifest in your physical, material manifestations when it comes to material possessions outside of yourself. If you make use of this affirmation, use it continuously, night and morning, and as often during the day as you think of it, and continue to do so until it becomes a part of you. Form the habit. Form the habit of thought. Form that habit, that thought process of waking up, going throughout your day, and knowing that whatever you choose to do, you can accomplish it, as long as you keep your mind and keep your mind dedicated and disciplined towards that direction with the power of the will, the power of the conscious mind. Keep that goal at the forefront of your mind. Unless you do this, you had better not start at all, because modern psychology tells us that when we start something and do not complete it, or make a resolution and do not keep it, we are forming the habit of failure, absolute, ignominious failure. Now, this is very, very, very important, because Mr. Wayne, that means for you too, with the decisions you're making at work, you are sticking to those decisions, regardless of what anybody else thinks, regardless of what other people want for you. You made that decision, you made that choice, you need to stick with it, and you need to do it. Because if you don't, if you back out on this, Mr. Wayne, if you back out on this, you're creating that habit. You're creating that thought process. You're creating that within yourself. And obviously your results in life will be dependent upon that decision to not keep going with it. Remember, it's all about going forward in the decisions you make. You have to go forward. Because he says it right here, unless we do, right? Unless you're going to really commit to it, do not do it, right? You have to commit to it wholeheartedly, because if you make that commitment and you don't follow through, you're building the habit of failure. We don't want that habit of failure. We don't need it in our lives. Viewer, Mr. Wayne, it does not belong in our consciousness, right? Success does. Creating does. Belief does. Decision, making a decision and sticking with it, is what we need to form, is the habit, the resolution we need to have and keep. If you do not intend to do a thing, do not start. If you do start, see it through, even if the heavens fall. And Mr. Wayne, like what happened with trucking, right? You fell hard. And for whatever reason, it was for the best, whether I knew at the time, because now you're at Walmart and you see what's going on with Walmart. Like we opened this video up with, right? I felt like I was in a very dark place, but after the things that have been happening and what I've been realizing with where I'm at, whatever I thought was dark happened to be me being planted in another place of gold, right? A gold soil. And I did commit to trucking. I did commit to it wholeheartedly. I was over the road. I gave up I gave up my trailer. I gave up to my babies, my cats. I absolutely love them. They changed my life. I cried over them when I failed at what I did, because I wasn't bringing the money in. I didn't have the opportunity anymore. I had no place to go to, right? I lived in the truck. I was out over the road for for a month and a half, almost 2 months straight, just trucking, driving, training, sleeping in the truck, waking up, driving, training, sleeping in the truck, right? I wasn't doing anything other than that. I committed wholeheartedly to that. And the failure I made, I know I failed at an extremely high level. And I fell, you know what? I fell very hard. If you make up your mind to do something, do it. Let nothing, no one interfere. The I in you has determined. The thing is settled. The die is cast. There is no longer any argument. So ultimately, if you make a decision to do something, if you fail at it, you did it, you made the decision, you stuck with it, you did the best that you knew how to do at the time. I know if that failure does happen and you lose, it is not a very fun experience. I'll tell you that from my personal experience. It was probably the worst failure that I've ever had. But, you know, we have to be grateful that we had it and that we even had the experience, because it's not the end of the world, as hard as it is, and we come across other things. And now we're at now, and the decision we made to let go of the thing from the past for the time being. If it comes back, it comes back. But planting our feet and taking advantage and doing the best with the opportunity that we have now. That's the new goal for me, for you, Mr. Wayne. And we have to move forward with it. If you carry out this idea, begin with small things, which you know you can control, and gradually increase the effort, but never under any circumstances allowing your I to be overruled. You will find that you can eventually control yourself. And many men and women have found to their sorrow that it is easier to control a kingdom than to control themselves. So he's saying right there, don't allow any external circumstances to change the direction of our I, right? We made the decision. We're moving towards that direction. We hold on to that ideal, that vision, and we move through whatever seeming external condition, which may be a quote-unquote negative factor. As long as we hold that thought, we're going to be moving towards that, both in consciousness and in attitude and in our behavior. And by the law, we will be attracting things to us externally that will be in alignment with that thought, right? The only thing that can stop that creation is ourselves. We can't be overruled. But when you have learned to control yourself, you will have found the world within, which controls the world without. You will have become irresistible. Men and things will respond to your every wish without any apparent effort on your part. Now, this is very interesting because we know we're talking about the subconscious. We're talking about programming ourselves to be something, right? And we'll be it by just effortless. We'll effortlessly be it, and we'll effortlessly manifest things because that's who we are. But right here, I remember there's a statement, I believe I said it in a former video, it's effortless power. You have to form and develop that effortless power. And that effortless power comes from our habit. It comes from our habitual way of thinking. It comes from our habitual way of actions, right? So that effortless power, you have to make the effort first in consciousness with the power of your will to stay dedicated toward that path. And eventually, as you grow into that image, as you grow into that thought process, as you grow into that character, it then becomes effortless, right? As you gradually increase the effort and continuously move toward that direction without being swerved off, you are moving your character, you are embodying that condition. And then, right, because you're embodying that person and you will operate from that person, that higher viewpoint. Naturally, it becomes effortless. Okay, you get the point. Let's move forward. Because we're already an hour in. We're about to be an hour in. We're like barely halfway through this page. Okay, this is not so strange or impossible as it may appear when you remember that the world within is controlled by the I, and that this I is a part or one with the infinite I, which is the universal energy or spirit, usually called God. Now remember how we went over when God told Moses that his name is I am that I am. And I am insinuates an identity of something that just is. The Spirit of God, the universal mind, the universal consciousness, has an identity and knows itself just to be. And that, when it comes to the expression or understanding of that, in I am that I am, is God saying he is that. I am that. I am the tree. I am the human. I am the flower. I am the bee. I am all these things. I am everything, right? I am that I am. And you and I, as human beings, being created in the image and likeness of God, our consciousness is a direct reflection and manifestation as the universal consciousness. Remember, Christ saw not robbery to make himself equal with God and took on the form of a servant. Right? And he came to teach us, to give us the embodiment of I am ourselves. Remember, Christ is within us. And as Paul tells us, that Christ is the embodiment of the Godhead bodily. It is the fullness of the Godhead bodily. So everything Christ is everything God is manifested in the flesh. When we understand the true nature of the I, in the oneness of our I and our consciousness as the universal I in form, we then step into, you could say, the Godhead. We step into our God power. We step into the power of Christ that is within us. And as he's saying here, this Christ, this higher image, this higher power is controlled by the mind. It's controlled by, our mind, our world within is controlled by the I, the spirit, the highest form of who we are, which is a reflection of what God is within us. Because it is a part or one. We are one with the infinite I, which is the universal energy or spirit, usually called God. This is not a mere statement or theory made for the purpose of confirming or establishing an idea, but it is a fact which has been accepted by the best religious thought as well as the best scientific thought. Herbert Spencer said, quote, "Amid all the mysteries by which we are surrounded, nothing is more certain than that we are ever in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy, from which all things proceed." End quote. So he's saying here, we are in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy from which all things proceed, from which all things have been created from. We know about the quantum field today and how quantum physics explains it, high energy physics, that there is no limitation to what this field can do, no limitation to the manifestations of what this field can create. So Lyman Abbott, in an address delivered before the alumni of Bangor Theological Seminary, said, quote, "We are coming to think of God as dwelling in man rather than as operating on men from without." End quote. So he's saying right there that we're coming to know God as something that is operating within us and through us, than as something that is just operating on us from an external factor, right? Yes, it is outside of us because it is everything, but it is also within us, and it's operating from within. Science goes a little way in its search and stops. Science finds the ever-present eternal energy, but religion finds the power behind this energy and locates it within man. But this is by no means a new discovery. The Bible says exactly the same thing, and the language is just as plain and convincing. quote, "Know ye not that ye are the temple of the living God?" End quote. Here then is the secret of the wonderful creative power of the world within. We are the temple of the living God. Seek ye first the kingdom, and everything will be established. And the kingdom of heaven is within you. He's talking about this internal power. Here's the secret of power, of mastery. To overcome does not mean to go without things. Self-denial is not success. We cannot give unless we get. We cannot be helpful unless we are strong. The infinite is not bankrupt, and we who are the representatives of infinite power should not be bankrupt either. And if we wish to be of service to others, we must have power and more power. But to get it, we must give it. We must be of service. And as we're talking, the way we give that service and the quality of service we give is dependent upon our mastery of ourselves and the forces of which we are, and the discipline we have in directing that force towards certain causes. The more we give, the more we shall get. We must become a channel whereby the universal can express activity. The universal is constantly seeking to express itself, to be of service, and it seeks the channel whereby it can find the greatest activity, where it can do the most good, where it can be of greatest service to mankind. The universal cannot express through you as long as you are busy with your plans, your own purposes. Quiet the senses, seek inspiration, focus the mental activity on the within. Dwell in the consciousness of your unity with omnipotence. Quote, "Still water runs deep." End quote. Now that is true, but it's also not true, because God has given you free will, right? You can choose to do and create the life that you want to choose. You can, right? He says over here, right? We could be what we will to be, and we could create the things that we want to create. But he says right here that we can't find the things we truly want where is it? The universal cannot express to you as you're busy with your own plans, your own purposes, right? There must be a fine line between what he's talking about, because we know the universal is expressing itself through the subconscious, and it's waiting for us to form the image of how it's going to express itself as. But he's saying, he is kind of contradicting himself a little bit. So what exactly is he saying when he's saying the universal cannot express through us if we have the power to choose how it's going to be expressed, if we are busy with our own plans and our own purposes? It says, quiet the senses, seek inspiration, focus mental activity on the within, dwell on the consciousness of your unity with omnipotence, still water runs deep. Contemplate the multitudinous opportunities to which you have spiritual access by the omnipresence of power. Visualize the events, circumstances, and conditions. Okay, so he means something from this statement, because even right here he goes back into visualizing, that we need to visualize the things at which we see manifested. We'll come back to that in another time. Visualize the events, circumstances, and conditions which these spiritual connections may assist in manifesting. Realize the fact that the essence of soul and soul of all things is spiritual, and that the spiritual is the real, because it is the life of all there is. When the spirit is gone, the life is gone. It is dead. It has ceased to exist. Now we know that to be true, because when an individual passes away, their body stays here, but the soul, the spirit, the consciousness of the individual that embodied in that body moved on to another phase, another plane of existence. We know these things to be true. We know angels and demons exist. How can they not? We know certain colors exist that we cannot see with our physical eyes. We know x-rays exist. We have instruments that can record x-rays, but x-rays we cannot see with our physical eyes. We know that there are beings that are operating on higher planes, even though we can't necessarily see those beings with our physical eyes. How could it be otherwise if we live in a universe of infinite manifestations and in a universe of infinite variety of vibration? And if us as humans are operating on a specific plane of vibration, remember, we feel heat because heat is a certain form of vibration, right? We feel cold because cold is a certain form of vibration. It's energy vibrating at a specific rate, and it manifests in that a certain form in accordance with that rate of vibration. We know sound. Sound is still energy. It's made from the same vibratory particles, but it's vibrating at a different frequency. So what would be known as the experience of heat due to a different rate of vibration, it is now in the form of sound. We now pick up on it as sound. Same thing with our eyes, right? We're picking up on physical things that are vibrating on the plane of which our eye is able to pick up on, right? These are frequencies, these are vibrations. Where are we? Back to the spirit, right? So we know consciousness. When the consciousness leaves the body ceases to live, to express life, and it'll decay over time. But the spirit, the mind, the I am itself of what that individual was, moves on to a different plane. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's something that is, always will be. All it could do is change form, right? Infinite intelligence, infinite mind is something that always was and always will be. These mental activities pertain to the world within, to the world of cause, and conditions and circumstances which result are the effect. It is thus that you become a creator. This is important work, and the higher, loftier, grander, and more noble ideals which you can conceive, the more important the work will be. So ultimately, the work of this program is, again, what? We are creating a mental attitude of higher thoughts. We are creating ourselves to be a higher character, so we could form a higher state of consciousness, so we'll be allowed to think from higher viewpoints internally. Remember, these viewpoints are inner viewpoints, because that inner, where we're at internally, will manifest where we are at externally and the things that we act upon. This is important work. It is very important work. If anything, this is going to be the most important work that you engage in, viewer. Mr. Wayne, this is the most important work that you can engage in, because it has everything to do with yourself and evolving into something higher internally. Overwork or overplay or over bodily activity of any kind produces conditions of mental apathy and stagnation, which makes it impossible to do the more important work, which results in a realization of conscious power. We should, therefore, seek the silence frequently. Power comes through repose. It is in the silence that we can be still. And when we are still, we can think. And thought is the secret of all attainment. Okay. Excuse me, sorry. So that statement right there. Okay, he's talking about the silence. When we look back up to the part that we didn't fully understand, right? When he talks about the universal cannot express through you, even though he's talking about we are the ones that set the universal in expression. Because in the end of that, remember what he says? He says, focus the mental activity on the within, right? Focus on the inside. He says, dwell in the conscious of your unity with omnipotence. Dwell on your unity with God. Then he gives us the quote, still water runs deep, end quote. Contemplate the multitudinous opportunities to which you have spiritual access by the omnipresence of power. So ultimately, it sounds like that statement, we may have the answer for it, right? He's talking about the silence. He's talking about going within. He's talking about becoming completely consciousness and completely united with this inner power, which we know is above any type of thought process that we can have, right? Because it's based in the I am itself, right? The I is above the mind. The I is above the body. It uses the mind and body for creating the conditions of which it wants, for manifesting the personality, manifesting the character of which it wants. So the universal, I believe I understand it now. The universal cannot express through you. He's talking about just the I itself, the realization of what this I actually is. So understanding the fullness of what the I is going to be beyond the mind, right? The realm of mind. And it's going to be found in the spirit. It's going to be found in the silence. It's going to be found in being still. Still water runs deep. So ultimately, gaining greater power, and as we just covered with week 2 and week 3, all that was about gaining control over the mind, right? Under tension. Remember, the first week he has us securing control of our posture, of our physical being, by sitting there still. Next week, in week 2, he has us not think at all. So not only are we maintaining our strong posture, we're doing it without thinking anything at all. And if we find ourselves thinking, remember that exercise gives us a direct clue on how much control we have over our own mind. Okay, and then week 3, we're building on top of that again. Not only securing control over the body, we're securing control over our thought process, and we're doing all that while simultaneously being as relaxed as we can be. Right? This, like when I say training, I'm talking about it's legitimate I want to use the word grueling, right? We know physical training can be grueling depending upon how far you choose to take yourself. It's the exact same thing here. It's not physical as much as it is spiritual, as much as it is mental. You're putting yourself through a mental resistance program. As we know, adaptation under stress, your mind will adapt under the stress you are putting it through. And you're also going to remember, this is self-imposed stress. So you're creating conditions of mental stress to relax through it, to help you gain more mental and spiritual power to meet and overcome these external conditions of stress we face in our lives on a day-to-day basis. Okay, where are we? It is impossible to do the more important work, which results in a realization of conscious power. Let me reread that, okay? Because I read it in the middle of the sentence. Let's reread where we left off. So he says, overwork, overplay, so we don't lose, you don't get a different understanding of the full picture, right? He says, overwork or overplay or over bodily activity of any kind produces conditions of mental apathy and stagnation, which makes it impossible to do the more important work, which results in a realization of conscious power. We should, therefore, seek the silence frequently. It says, power comes through repose. Remember, repose is being still, it's being silent. So he's saying power comes through silence, stillness. It is in the silence that we can be still. And when we are still, we can think. And thought is the secret of all attainment. Thought is a mode of motion and is carried by the law of vibration, the same as light or electricity. It is given vitality by the emotions through the law of love. It takes form and expression by the law of growth. It is a product of the spiritual eye, hence its divine spiritual and creative nature. Now we know, we're told, thoughts are things, are they not? Thoughts are legitimate, energetic forces that go from the mind. They extend from the mind and they travel the infinite mind. Now I know you've been with somebody and you thought of something or you said something and that other person said, hey, I was just thinking the same thing. Because we are communicating. Remember, 95% of communication is subconscious. 95% of communication are what is not spoken, because it's being spoken from the inner thought process. Now, thought as a force, thought as an energy, right? It's a vibration. We know that the mind, there's no such thing as empty space. It's filled by living conscious intelligence. And since we are in vibration, our power of thought is we're creating vibrations through our thought process. And this vibration travels beyond us. It extends beyond us through the infinite mind. Now, the law of attraction, remember how he defines it. He says, thought automatically correlates with its object and brings it into manifestation. Now, this is a power of our conscious thought, because we could legitimately create whatever vibration we want with the mind, with our thought process, but we have to be able to think of it, right? Because through thinking of it, that's where the creation of it comes into being, because it comes from a vibratory activity. It says thought is a mode of motion. It is carried by the law of vibration. So when you're thinking, you're creating motion, and that motion is carried by the law of vibration. So vibration carries your thought through the infinite mind. The same way as light or electricity. So the same way light travels universal mind, your thoughts are traveling in the exact same way by the very same law. It is given by vitality by the emotions, and the power behind the thought is given life by the emotion, right? By the law of love. It takes form and expression by the law of growth. So the law of growth, the law of love is giving life to the vibration of thought, and it begins to express itself and embody itself in form by the law of growth. Remember, because we grow into what it is that we are thinking most of the time, do we not? We become that which we think about. And the things we think about, or the things we act upon, the thoughts we act upon, are the ones that we are most emotional about. It is a product of the spiritual eye, hence its divine, spiritual, and creative nature. From this, it is evident that in order to express power, abundance, or any other constructive purpose, the emotions must be called upon to give feeling to the thought so that it will take form. How may this purpose be accomplished? This is the vital point. How may we develop the faith, the courage, the feeling, which will result in accomplishment? Now, you know, when it comes to what it is that you're visualizing, you have to have a compelled. That's why you have to want it. It has to be something that you want, something that you really, truly desire, right? Because desire force is the feeling. Because you could think something and not act upon it at all. Right? It is what it is. It's just a thought form. Pass through your consciousness and you just forgot about it later on, right? But the things that move you emotionally, are the things that you think about most. So you have to have some kind of emotional reason, an emotional connection to the goal you have, to the ideal of which you are trying to manifest. Because emotion is the force which will give it root. And by the law of growth, it will eventually take form through your character and conduct. So, as he said, how will the result be accomplished? The reply is by exercise. You have to perform the exercises. And if you are performing them with us, keep going. You have to keep building upon where you are in consciousness. So he says mental strength is secured in exactly the same way that physical strength is secured, by exercise. We think something, perhaps with difficulty the first time. We think the same thing again, and it becomes easier this time. We think it again and again. It then becomes a mental habit. We continue to think the same thing. Finally, it becomes automatic. It becomes subconscious. We can no longer help thinking this thing. We are now positive of what we think. There is no longer any doubt about it. We are sure. We know. And when he says that, we are sure that we're thinking it. We are sure we know it because we're consciously, habitually thinking about the thing. We become what we think about most of the time. It's the nature of consciousness to embody that which it thinks. The subconscious mind, the seat of habit, the part of us that gives us effortless power, the ability to do something with power effortlessly, is dependent upon our subconsciousness, right? Our programming. And all that is decided and directed first by our conscious will, our reasoning. Well, yes and no. Remember, as we get older and we develop the stronger conscious, as we develop and create, let me rephrase all this. As we grow and mature, and our brain grows and mature, we then grow into more consciousness. Because when we're younger, we're programmed when we're younger. We're programmed by our environment. We're programmed by the world. Because we haven't developed the will yet to think for ourselves. Once our brain develops and our conscious mind develops to the point of thinking for itself, and goes through this process of recreating itself by re-engaging its mind, by redirecting the mental forces to reprogram the subconscious, that's when, like right here, that's when we really come into our own. Last week I asked you to relax, to let go physically. This week, I'm going to ask you to let go mentally. If you practice the exercise given you last week, 15 or 20 minutes a day in accordance with the instructions, you can no doubt relax physically. And anyone who cannot consciously do this quickly and completely is not a master of himself. He has not obtained freedom. He is still a slave to conditions. But I shall assume that you have mastered the exercise and are ready to take the next step, which is mental freedom. It says this week, after taking your usual position, remove all tension by completely relaxing. Then mentally let go of all adverse conditions, such as hatred, anger, worry, jealousy, envy, sorrow, trouble, or disappointment of any kind. Wow, this is exactly what I need personally here in this very moment, because there are, like I opened this entire video with, there are things that are outside of our control when it comes to people and other people's attitude. Because remember, we're all centers of our own. We're all divine centers of causation. And everybody has will and everybody has choice. And we cannot choose how other people are going to react or respond or even take things. All we could do is choose to continue to be the best that we can be. Right? We have to let to let go of disappointments. We have to let go of misunderstandings. We have to let go of things that are just outside of our control. We have to not let it affect us and our inner states, because we don't want to begin setting causes in motion that had nothing to do with us to begin with, just by bringing or absorbing somebody else's thinking. Remember, we're learning here to master that. We're learning here to overcome that. And we do that through training. So he's saying, let go of all those adverse conditions. Let go of things like hate, anger, worry, jealousy, envy, sorrow, trouble, or disappointment of any kind. Just let it go and sit in a place of stillness and quietness within. It says you may say you cannot let go of these things, but you can. You can do so by mentally determining to do so, by voluntary intention and persistence. And like the quote he gave us, the affirmation, right? We can be what we will to be. I can be what I will to be, which means that we don't need to let what's going on the outside affect what's going on the inside. All right, we can overcome those conditions because we ourselves are our own divine centers of causation. And we choose how we're going to let things affect us. Excuse me, sorry. You can do so by mentally determining to do so. Okay, let's reread that whole thing. You may say you cannot let go of these things, but you can. You can do so by mentally determining to do so, by voluntary intention and persistence. The reason that some cannot do this is because they allow themselves to be controlled by the emotions instead of by their intellect. But those who will be guided by the intellect will gain the victory. Now remember, in the first part, our conscious mind, the intellect, is the watchman at the gate. It is the part of ourselves which guards the subconscious mind, which is the seat of our emotions. It is where our emotions come and stem from. The emotions, the body, the subconscious body is the emotional body, and our conscious body, our intellect, our mind, our reasoning, has to guard it and direct it. Remember, we learn in Proverbs that we need to guard our heart, for it determines the course of our lives. Our emotions, our inner spiritual nature, we have to take care of. But those who will be guided by the intellect will gain the victory. You will not succeed the first time you try, but practice makes perfect, in this as in everything else. And you must succeed in dismissing, eliminating, and completely destroying these negative and destructive thoughts, because they are the seed which is constantly germinating into discordant conditions of every conceivable kind and description. Quote, there is nothing truer than that the quality of thought which we entertain correlates certain externals in the outside world. This is the law from which there is no escape, and it is this law, this correlative of the thought with its object, that from time immemorial has led the people to believe in special providence. End quote. That is from a man named Wilmans. And that is the end of part 4. So we have our training for the week. We're going to be listening to this part every single day, once a day, as we meditate, while simultaneously doing our 30 minutes of mental training and meditation. So this week, he tells us to relax and let go of any kind of condition, circumstance we may have brought disappointment, that may have brought misunderstanding, that may have just brought feelings of discontent. We have to just let it go, because if we begin to focus our mind on those things, we're moving our attention from something that is more important, which is the priorities we have in our own lives. Remember, a lot of this is also dependent upon your values and your priorities. There are things that are completely outside of our control, right, which is other people. But the things that are within our control is ourselves and our ability to respond to the conditions and circumstances from a higher place, a higher viewpoint. And we know that viewpoint is of love. Now, I know I'm not perfect as a human being. Nobody is. I make mistakes too. But we know our intentions, what we mean when we do things, and sometimes, especially if alcohol is involved. Now, alcohol is known as a spirit for a reason, and it changes the way a person can perceive things and how they take things. And we know a negative attitude, no matter how great something strong can be, if you're taking it in from a negative place, it's just going to be something negative to you. And being on the receiving end of somebody under the influence, or anybody else, or any external thing that could come from a negative place, we cannot let that affect our inner state. Now, we're almost sober for 4 years. We've been sober for 3.5 years. I myself had a very bad habit of doing drugs and drinking alcohol in the past. So even for me, I understand it, because I know that negative place and how I filter my reality from where I was then to where I am now. My whole life turned around and changed for the better once I got sober, because I regained control over a substance, an external substance. So I know, like Christ tells us, we have to forgive those that have not yet reached that point. That's all I gotta say for that, because I know you, viewer, you may be experiencing certain things yourself. And as hard as it can be, we just need to be the bigger person, not for them, for ourselves. And we need to maintain control of our own inner state, because again, that's going to determine the course of where we go next. And we have to keep moving forward to creating the life we need, the life we want, in a life that is better for us. So that being said, we got our 30 minutes, and we will see you next Wednesday for part 5. God bless you.